Hello. So we're entering the world of contracts, which may sound like a boring and dry topic. It actually involves a lot of stuff that we deal with every day when we buy stuff at the grocery store, when we click a little I accept button for an end user license agreement, when we download the latest version of Adobe Flash or something like that. We are surrounded by contracts and they largely run our economy. So it's a really important topic, and actually we can get some really fascinating stories looking at contracts to learn a little bit about the doctrine behind it and how economics can help us think about some of these things. So this is just an intro, an overview of what contracts are, and in subsequent videos we'll talk about some of the specifics. But so as an intro to contracts, we need to talk about what a contract is, which is surprisingly difficult. It's hard to say exactly what a contract is. You may think of a piece of paper with a signature on it. That could be a contract, but it very well could not be. You could have a very legal looking document, maybe drafted by a lawyer, have it signed by someone, maybe it's been notarized. That doesn't make it a contract. A contract is a legally enforceable set of promises, or they can be promises, they can be there can be actions, but it's not just a piece of paper with a signature on it. That may be the form that it takes a lot of times, but we need more than that. We need it to be a legally enforceable, so a specific set of conditions have to be met for it to actually be a contract. Now, the basic things that we need for a contract, we need, let's say, two parties. There could be more parties than that, but it starts getting confusing. We'll just assume there are two parties. They both need to kind of give something for this contract. It can't be a totally one-sided deal. So if someone promises to mow my lawn for me, if they're doing that out of the goodness of their heart and it's my neighbor and they just promise to mow my lawn next week, that's not a contract. If they decide to change their mind, there's nothing I can do to have a court come in and say, hey, you promised you would do that. It's true, they promised, but it wasn't a contract because I didn't have any skin in the game. I didn't give anything in that contract. So we call consideration this idea that each party has to give something, and that might be a promise, that might be an action, it might be money, right? But each party has to give something for it to be a legally enforceable set of promises. There are also conditions about what the offer and acceptance look like. So to determine if there is a contract or not, courts will look at what offer was put forward by one party and whether it was accepted by the other party. And there's a whole, there's a series of cases that lay out kind of the circumstances that a court says count. And it may depend on what type of contract. Many states require something like a property interest to be transferred has to be in writing and signed by the parties. You can't just make an oral agreement and exchange some money and say that you've sold that property. You might do those things, but for it to be a legally enforceable promise for that type of transaction, a lot of states would say that you need to have it in writing and signed. Now, the basics of a contract, so promises or actions, something, some way they have skin in the game from both sides. There has to be an offer of some sort that is then accepted by the other party. Those are the basics to have a legally enforceable contract. We'll talk a lot more about some of the details and how economics can help us think about those.